So Netflix to buy Warner Brothers and HBO Max in $82.7 billion deal. When I first saw this hit the news waves, I'm like, oh my God, this is massive. And the other reaction was, are we looking at a monopoly here? Netflix is already dominating, as you know, and buying, Warner Brothers, that would just further that. Also, all the major Warner Brothers properties set to go to Netflix in watershed deal. Could be any number of things. So the Harry Potter stuff. I think Matrix is part of Warner Brothers too. If you can call that a franchise. DC universe, right? So Batman, Superman, all those kind of things. Old movies, Casablanca, Citizen Kane. Then they were saying here other bidders were possible at Paramount and Comcast. So there were multiple bidders here. This does get complicated because there's going to be politics involved when you're dealing with so much money, which we'll get into. Some of the properties that are not going in the deal would be the cable stuff. So CNN, TNT, Home Garden TV, that kind of thing. And this is also going to piss off theater owners. It is an interesting thing because Netflix was saying that I think they're going to honor whatever contracts that Warner Brothers had with theater owners. But already, a lot of people are staying home and just watching stuff on Netflix. I'll just be frank with you guys. Like my wife and I, we still go to the theaters, but really only for the kind of those big movies that there's some sort of spectacle or reason why you want to go see it in the theater. Because these days at home, you got big screens at home and you got so much content. It doesn't mean that people don't go to theaters anymore, but certainly it changes the whole equation when you got a big player like Netflix buying up Warner Brothers. We'll see. We'll read some highlights here. It says movie theater operators are worried for the future of the theatrical industry if Netflix completes its acquisition of Warner Brothers Discovery, studio and streaming assets. Industry trade organizations and producers have called on regulatory advisors to look closely at the deal. So certainly they want to protect their business, perfectly understandable. So they're going to try to lobby on their behalf. Then obviously then Netflix will lobby on their behalf, and then maybe Comcast and Paramount will lobby on their behalf. Like it's quite a lot of money and a lot of lobbying going on here. Netflix, which has traditionally limited its theatrical release and how long they play in theaters, has said it will honor existing WBD cinematic contracts that run through 2029. So just a couple more years on that. Here's a quote from the theater industry, just so you guys can hear some different stuff. It says, quote, "It's no secret that this was probably the least desired outcome for many theater owners." That's coming from Fandango. There are no two ways around that. This may be one of the most meaningful days in the history of the business, but it could yet to be a constructive one for cinema if Netflix honors, you never know, if Netflix honors early indications that it will maintain the theatrical business model of Warner Brothers properties and lean into those unique strategies which are not replicable on a streaming platform. I'll say this, when things go into theaters these days, it feels like it hits streaming really, really fast. And that's especially for movies that just don't do well in the theaters. So sometimes you'll see a movie in theaters and often be like a lower budget one. And it just, the theater operators will have the numbers on that. They'll know whether or not it's worth putting in the movie, in the theater. Because if people aren't buying tickets for it, get to the streaming as soon as possible. You're kind of wasting space. Because at any moment, a theater only has so many screens. And essentially, for them to be profitable, you want to make sure, if you could, every screening is sold out. That's how this plays out. So I think the combination of when you schedule stuff, could how studios schedule releases also matters as well. So this, for example, if a big movie comes out and you and your family are going to go see one movie, and then you have a choice of 5, and you're just like, well, I'm just going to go for that big movie, and so then you don't go see the other one. So the scheduling matters quite a bit on this stuff also, along with when it hits streaming. There's a lot going on here. Cinema United is another one. They say the proposed acquisition of Warner Brothers by Netflix poses an unprecedented threat to the global exhibition business. The negative impact of this acquisition will impact theaters from the biggest circuits to one-screen independents in small towns in the United States and around the world. And then you got the political aspect of this. Now, theoretically, it says here, this just came out from CNBC right now. Trump administration views Netflix and Warner Brothers deal with, quote, heavy skepticism. That's from a senior official. So I say theoretically because I think the way that Trump does business is if you put money in his pocket in some way, he's like, oh, you know what, maybe it's not so bad. And, starting to lobby for who's going to put money in his pocket. I'll be frank with you guys. There's more on this, which I want to get into some of the details because it's interesting when you go through it, because I think you're also going to deal with monopoly issues, content control issues if, say, Trump wants to get involved with this stuff. And then if you remember, say, the Paramount and the CBS situation where, the White House is trying to put pressure on, say, news that you can't report certain kind of things or you should fire certain kind of people. Like there's all sorts of, issues and problems with this stuff. And then just from my other reaction, say from a talent perspective, say you're an actor or writer, director, whatever, the idea that there's only one employer out there opposed to, having competing employers is not great for workers, right? So for example, let's say you got a great script or whatever, and or great production that you want to do, and there's only like two people bidding, Netflix and Disney, effectively, right? Or because I think Disney bought Fox, if I remember correctly. You just run out of bidders, and this idea that there's only a few major players it's not great. And this is sort of where the industry's been going for a while. Disney's just buying up all kinds of crap, as you can see Netflix here. Let's see some more here. So this is from Wall Street Journal. It says Netflix mega deal will need the Trump administration's blessing. Okay, so what do you got to say about this? It will also have to contend with the preferences of President Trump, who is close with Paramount chief executive David Ellison, and his father could pressure antitrust enforcers to steer Warner toward Paramount instead. So that's why people hang out with Trump all the time at Mar-a-Lago. They're trying to get favor because, Warner Brothers does have a good catalog, and if you got a way to, hey, get a good price, get it through the regulators, why not, I guess. What else we have here? Netflix co-CEO Ted Sarandos said Friday the company is, quote, highly confident the deal will win approval because it is, quote, pro-consumer and pro-innovation. I guess that is the word you got to say these days when in doubt, to say it's innovative that we have this big mega agglomerate, company. Then it says here for the Justice Department will look into it, and then mergers investigations typically take at least 10 months before the government files suit to block the transaction. And that's if the Justice Department, I should make it clear, they haven't formally investigated yet, but if they were to take a look at it. I wouldn't be shocked if they do, though, because it's such a big deal. And there's all these lobbies involved. So I mentioned the theater owners, other potential buyers. So I wouldn't be shocked if someone looks at it, but it'll take a while. Let's see what more it says. It says Trump's current antitrust chiefs, Gail Slater at the Justice Department and Andrew Ferguson at FTC, have had a relatively light touch so far when it comes to policing big deals. Both have made clear they are focused on protecting competition in cost of living sectors such as healthcare and housing. Interesting. So they may enforce, some of these monopoly laws, may not enforce others, right? So it all depends who is, I guess, at the reins, I guess you could say. So it's not like they don't do anything, but they'll be hands off on some and hands off on others. This is Elizabeth Warren. She has some stuff to say about this. She says, this deal looks like an anti-monopoly nightmare. A Netflix Warner Brothers would create one of the massive media giant with control of close to half of the streaming market, threatening to force Americans into higher subscription prices and fewer choices over what and how they watch, while putting American workers at risk. So she's mentioning both consumers and workers here. Under Donald Trump, the antitrust review process has become a cesspool of political favoritism and corruption. The Justice Department must enforce our nation's anti-monopoly laws fairly and transparently, not use Warner Brothers deal review to invite influence peddling and bribery. You got another issue as well, just in terms of just philosophical, is like, do we want just one media company as a whole? Even if, the Trump people go for it, like how are the actual consumers going to react to that? Just from regular people, like if you tell someone, hey, Netflix is buying everything and there's only be one station, Netflix, what do you think? For me, I like having a variety of choices because I know what happens if only one entity, how can I say, controls all the content, because then depending on what they decide to promote, be it their algorithms, because Netflix has an algorithm the same way that YouTube does, it just narrows down the opportunity for different types of voices and different types of content. I do like Netflix, but I don't 100% spend all my time there. I like YouTube. I don't 100% time there, right? I like to look at multiple platforms, and there is some worrying with that just from the consumer standpoint. More, it's actually kind of interesting. They were talking about some of the laws here. I'll read it. It says Netflix and HBO Max together would control around 30% of the U.S. subscription streaming marketplace. So not quite exactly what Elizabeth Warren was saying. This is from Wall Street Journal, what they're saying. So 30%. Mergers of direct competitors are presumed to be illegal when the combined company has more than 30% market share. So I think that's why she would say it is 50%, right? So, and that's the kind of stuff you have to prove in court. This is definitely illegal because they're buying up more market share than is healthy for the market. That's an interesting thing to take a look at, obviously. Also says here is from Netflix. They say Netflix has argued that the streaming marketplace should also include mostly free video platforms such as YouTube, Facebook, and TikTok. It also believes that even if the market is limited to subscription-based services, there is no evidence that adding HBO Max would reduce competition or harm consumers, according to a person familiar with the matter. Of course, they're going to say that. But that's an interesting, thing there that they added in is, what do we consider to be streaming? Do we consider YouTube to be a direct competitor to Netflix, right? Because one's free, one's paid. So if you include YouTube and other, TikTok, theoretically you could over Facebook, then that makes the marketplace bigger. And then therefore, if they buy HBO Max or whatever, then they have a smaller share of the quote, entire marketplace, depending on how you define marketplace. So that's an interesting argument that Netflix is going to make there. I think it's kind of a weak argument myself, but I get what they're saying. And again, this is the headline then. Netflix to buy Warner Brothers and HBO Max in $82.7 billion deal. And my ultimate conclusion on this, I think Trump's going to try to figure out a way to put money in his pocket in some way. And then his buddies around him will try to worm tongue in, and they'll try to do some sort of, if you let this deal go through and we won't investigate you, then you have to have some sort of content things that we approve of. So I am very leery of that. So we'll see how this plays out. It's probably going to get really messy, and this won't be the end of you hearing about this deal. This just came out today. So I do appreciate your time, everyone, and I'll catch you all in the next video.